What sort of experiences should the Nijez expect to go through when creating a strong connection to their other, and what sort of gifts are unlocked once it's made?
For a Niji, the first thing and the strongest thing felt from the other, the Nijai, is the Ni. And what will be felt as a general sensation when that is coming on is euphoria, a possibility euphoria. All kinds of ideas, connections, places you could go, just the sheer excitement of what you could do will come over you. And it'll just be very like bodily, in a way bodily, but you'll just feel a lot of like movement energy come into you. And the upside is you're going to have a greater degree, first and foremost, of confidence. This quadrant of the psyche for Naiji is the most foreign. So to have that kind of strong, good feeling coming from this area, which is unconscious Ni for us, it makes us feel like the world is a much better place than we thought it was, that our story is much more interesting than we thought it was, that there are way more options and possibilities of where things could go than we thought. And this loosens us up, because Naiji tend to be a bit tightly wound, so that loosens us up. And kind of like we talk sometimes about MMA fighters, that allows us to think better. So as far as gifts, the Nai natural genius will become much more expansive. There will be an ability to use it in real time. That's another one, is because our real-time power for speed is V, which is not as strong as Ni is when it comes to being used conversationally. Ni, it's why Ni Alpha and other Ni mojos tend to be well represented in comedy, is Ni gives a idea, speed, and looseness and connectivity. So you combine that pattern-based ability, that real-time pattern-based ability, with Nai's out-of-time pattern-based ability, and the mental capabilities that you'll have as a Naiji will expand exponentially. Some things to watch out for is that this quadrant is alien, as mentioned, and so there can be a confusion. We've seen a lot of this in the data so far, where that Ni euphoria happens because of some sort of V. V just happening in the environment somehow, or perhaps a V that the person did. But either way, a V they did or V that they experienced, they associate that with the Ni euphoria. And so there can become an addictive quality, like maybe the person has never had a good connection with their other, the Naiji has never had that maybe a strong connection, or it's come in fits and starts. And if that's the case, then perhaps going to a particular kind of event, or having a certain kind of food or beverage or something, or anything like this that is just visceral experience, if that was a portal into the Ni of your other coming to you, there can be like, you know, hitting that button like crazy. Like, for example, like caffeine is one. Caffeine can waken up the connection to the other because it's an altered state experience. However, that doesn't mean that caffeine is the ideal way to contact your other. However, many Naiji may actually really become like, almost like the goddess named coffee. And that's because they actually have a lot of fond associations of having coffee, and they got stimulated and their mind started jumping around. They liked that connection. So they associate that specific V of the caffeinated beverage with a connection to the other. So that's something to watch out for, is knowing that the Ni can come in any number of forms, and that you want to find the most healthy and reliable ones. Also, the Ni frees the Naiji up a lot psychically. The thing to watch out for is that if you're not used to doing it, you may not know that there's the rest of the power flow cycle. So that as a Padler Naiji, you'll have an advantage there. You know that this euphoria is going to increase your abilities, and you're supposed to take it down the pathway. If you don't have that, there can be a thinking, this is it, I have found it somehow, and you kind of get possessed by Ni, and you may spend all your money to go, you know, own the coffee bean, because you've gone crazy with like coffee is how I connect to my other. I'm just making this up, but this is actually an example that does happen. It is an actual riff. You know, the caffeinated Naiji. So anyway, when that happens, the Naiji needs to be able to take that euphoria and put it down into other cool stuff that their powers allow, knowing that that's basically souping up all their peak pathway, that's not the end of the peak pathway, which is tempting because Ni feels great. Ni and V are very up powers, and so for hunters, when they get their first influx from the other, like, I don't ever want to leave this. I don't know what this is, but whatever I did that got me here, like say coffee for some people, I'm just going to keep doing that, and I don't want to ever leave here. So that's actually not how it's supposed to work. But that shows you how good it feels when it comes on. And that sense of well-being and possibility that Ni gives, it allows Nai to go way farther than it could otherwise.
On the Nijai side, an experience getting in touch with the Nai is like suddenly having this corner person in your head who is looking out for your interests based on the best natural law. Nai is like the natural law channel, so when the Ni and the Nai are fused, then you suddenly have kind of an epic sense of natural law that you normally don't have as a Nijai, because Nijai are kind of in many ways blissfully unaware and just kind of sailing through life and through a lot of, it is actually natural law, but it feels like luck, so they just kind of luckily stumble on things. But then when the Ni connects with the Nai, you actually see how the luck has patterns that you've been surfing, and that your Ni was just naturally gravitating towards that, and then the Nai actually shows how those patterns emerge from the void or something like that. It's like a really epic, heavy feeling. Ni is kind of a light power, and so when it connects to Nai for the first time, you really get a sense of like the importantness, the dire epicness of the things that you're doing, whereas before it kind of been like, oh, it's really fun doing this, or something like, I'm involved in a revolution, yay! But the Nai is like, this is an epic revolution. Like, for Nijai, this also lends a sense of sureness, which is normally very foreign for Nijai. Normally, Ni is very relativistic power, and it likes to keep its options open, and it tends to sometimes have a sense that it's just kind of landing on options, like a cat sort of always lands on its feet kind of a thing. It's just like, oh, I'll just do this and everything will work out in the end. But like I said, the Ni is actually naturally surfing these natural law patterns, so there can be this kind of chancy feeling. But with the Nai, there's actually a sureness that you were supposed to land there, or that, different from like a cat, an actual like wolf, because wolves track things. So there's a sense that you actually are tracking natural law, and it's a much more aware and purposeful and sure sense that's normally very foreign for a Nijai.
Go!
Then there's kind of, I wouldn't call this a downside, because it has an upside and a downside to it, which is the HSP, and that's really trippy, because Nai, when it first turns on, it feels like this really, really heavy feeling that kind of like permeates every pore. I don't know how to describe it, but you just feel really surly. And for a Nijai who's normally like happy-go-lucky, suddenly is like kind of emo kid, like, I mean, that kind of trivializes it, but HSP just feels like every single thing you can detect, very heightened senses. You're just extremely, extremely sensitive. And Nijai, being permeable, are already very, very sensitive to start with. So if you can imagine that sensitivity being like ratcheted up about 1,000,000-fold, that's what HSP feels like. And that's really cool because you just simply see things that you didn't see before. And so it gives you an awesome, Nai is like a really awesome sight upgrade. It's like having just super night vision goggles or something all of a sudden. Because Ni is already pretty cool and very perceptive and astute, so it's like the Ni and the Nai working together is like double power. So the challenge can be not kind of the same issues with the permeability, which is not getting taken out by your sensitivities, because the environment already feels pretty sensitive to a Nijai, but not in the sense of like V in the environment, because with the Ni and the Jai, they sense like people's moods and emotions and stuff like that. But then when the other comes in, the Nai, and then we'll get into the Ji later too, because that lends a heightened awareness. But both of those, it's suddenly you're aware of like the mood tonal shifts in the environment and the sixth sense like soul kind of stuff. because Nai is modulated by V, suddenly V just feels like the most painful thing ever. So you're already sensitive with those kinds of things from your natural Ni and Jai powers, and then on top of it, like the Nai lends a heightened sensitivity, and then we'll get into later like the Ji, a heightened sensitivity of more other things. But then the V, like losing it here. HSP is a gift as long as you know how to benefit from those sight upgrades when you're in that state of mind, while simultaneously protecting yourself from getting taken out by the sheer sensitivity of the experience. That's when you drop back down into your apparatus powers, because Vi being polar means that like high stakes is like a thing for us. And so the Vi and the Nai together just has this sense of this is like epic high stakes for real, for all the marbles, like that kind of stuff. And you can choke under that. You just get freaked out by the epicness and the heaviness, the significance of it.
It's gold!
Okay.
For a Naiji, when the other comes with the connection of Jai, the tandem power connection, the values-based channel, there's an awareness of your own poignancy, your own sense of harmony, because normally Ji is very aware of like psychological dynamics between yourself and others, but as far as well-being, actually we have Zai, which means we're unflappable. We're actually really good at just shrugging stuff off, which is really awesome, but it does mean we're not naturally paying attention to things that might be toxic. We just kind of Zai that, which is good in a lot of cases, but actually it means that we can be allowing something that is unhealthy to be around us when it shouldn't be. That's the downside of being unflappable. In order to be unflappable, you sometimes have to just be chill about things as a general principle, but that general principle can mean that you are unfeeling to things you should really be feeling. That'd be very important for you to know for safety. That brings in the concept of safety, is when Jai comes to the Naiji, there's a sense of like inner warmth and well-being and safety and healing. It feels very healing. A lot of psychological, kind of spiritual healing will kind of come over you like a warm glow when the Jai is on the Naiji. So this gift of knowing what is healthy and what is toxic, that gives also an awareness of what ground you should stand on, because naturally Naiji are more oriented on the left, which is moving forward, and then they use their Zai to kind of keep equilibrium as they move forward and to kind of like take shots and shrug them off. But we don't naturally have like ground we stand on. So when the Jai is with us, actually it greatly increases in a way our Zai, but in a values-based way. It makes us absolutely sure of things that we cannot leave behind, that we must stand by, that we must be authentic about. So the Jai will put demands on us to be authentic, but when we do, we'll feel more healing warmth. We'll feel more like inner safety of our spirit. Even though the environment may not appreciate that, if our other Jai says be authentic, and then we're authentic and it says good job, with a Jai, it just feels healing and warm, and you feel like you can just shrug off anything the environment might throw at you. Also, Naiji are wired with their Ji to protect, defend, to advocate for heroic Jai. So when the other comes to you with heroic Jai, there's a sense of it is inconceivable to go backwards, which is the towers are kind of like immovable objects, and the pushers up here are like irresistible forces. So Naiji feel good on offense, but when they go on defense too long, it can be de-energizing to us, and we can lose confidence. But not if the other's Jai is with us. We don't lose confidence, because if this is what sacred ground feels like, then everything's fine. So there's nothing the world can really do to shake that from me. And it gives a sense of inner peace and inner balance to the Naiji that allows our natural dissatisfaction and ferocity to be noble and whole and to have a home. It's kind of like a special haven that was made just for us. And particularly Naiji being conceptual, it'll feel almost like a magic land, a fantastical fairyland that you get to kind of go to, and in that place they care deeply for you, and that care, that empathy for your state, it heals you and it protects you from the toxins in the world, and it lets you know who you must protect and what about yourself you must protect. For example, protecting your conscience, because it's important. Naiji have the Ji that's very strong, but it is a very dominant form of values-based because it's directive. So that combined with Zai can make Naiji want to do things to win that maybe is compromising their virtue, their conscience, and they'll regret that they did that. The Nijai Jai, when you feel it, you will know what you are okay with and what you are not okay with, and that will make making choices that may seem like difficult, otherwise not difficult. I mean, yes, that may be difficult in worldly terms, but no, you know exactly how your other Jai feels on that, and so for you, it's not a hard question at all. It's a simple question. Whatever the Jai says is healthy, you go that way. What's toxic, you turn your nose up. Things to watch out for is the Nijai Jai is very compelling as far as wanting to protect it, so you have to watch out for being bullied or held hostage by improper Jai. But if your connection with your other is good, that won't be the case, but you do have to watch out for that. But just know it actually comes from a heroic purpose, which is Ji can kind of feel like it needs to help this Jai or this Jai or this Jai, and if those aren't proper, or also Ji expectations aren't proper, the Jai is wild, and it will shrug those things off. So that if a Nijai is a proper, healthy companion, the Jai requests of that creature will trump any requests in the environment. So that's really good if the environment is having Jez requests or whatever that are improper. This more proper request will take precedence, and so those other lesser ones will be ignored, which is very, very good. Going along with the awareness of what's toxic and healthy to yourself and to those who are important to you, there's also, particularly for yourself and for your sense of being, what is healthy and toxic for that, there's going to be the issue of, as I was saying, there will be the issue of discomfort. The Jai will make you more aware that something's uncomfortable. Zai goes with doable or undoable. So if it's doable, then comfort is not really a consideration. But Jai does think in terms of, is that comfortable or uncomfortable for your sense of well-being? And that is going to give you a huge bump also in your mojo rating. Ni will as well, but that Jai thing there, as far as like how something's hitting you in a healthy or toxic way, that's a really a powerful form of mojo rating, which Ni Jai are strong at, and as a Naiji, you get access to through your other, which is very, very helpful. But you'll find that you are more sensitive to things like, I don't like the mood in this room. Normally as an IG, you're just like, whatever, I do my thing. You just pierce on through. You're a hunter. You just cleave your way through the environment. But you'll find that Jai sensitivity that you're now aware of will be like, I don't like walking through that forest. It's icky. And if you can, you should go another way. As a hunter, it's important to note, it may feel like, oh, I can't go just straight. I have to go out of the way where the Jai feels comfortable. That Jai is teaching you the better roads. That's how you have to think of it. The Jai knows the roads that are better and reward more the sense of well-being. And so as a hunter, you can then focus on get those. Because otherwise, a hunter, you just think, get the fastest route, right? Get the most efficient route. Like I smell getting over there, go right for it. But kind of like how Zai can feel out an athletic event and you kind of like ride the moment as it happens, and so you take like a circuitous event to perfection. But actually all those curves and loops were part of the perfect route. Jai can teach that for a Naiji as far as like health, because Naiji, wolf packs are awesome, but a downside is they can forget about other things that are important, and the way they are operating makes it to where you're losing a lot of life. You're losing a lot of things that you shouldn't be writing off. And you won't know that until the adventure is over, because we think of that second. But for Nijai, they will say, do you really want to do that? Because that will put you as a connection to the world in this position. It's important that you have Jai approval on that, because Naiji, they tend to make bold moves, and those moves will affect dramatically their sense of well-being and the well-being of others because of the powers Naiji have. Jai is really good at like a sounding board, virtue oracle, to kind of like go up to and say, I'm thinking about doing this, and see how the Jai reacts from your other. And that kind of gives you prediction on how heroic that move would be if you did it. Your Jai will let you know if you went that way, yes, you might get from A to B, but how will Jai score you for that? Since you're an IG, it's crucial you know how that works, because that's the score you need to get. And Jai tells you how to get that score.
The experience of Ji for a Nijai will be sudden social awareness, because Jai has an unaware quality to it. And this helps out in a lot of different ways, because Jai tends to be individualistic looking, and it tends to read itself and other people as individuals who have certain needs and wants and desires and things that need to be met, and also virtues and how to evaluate that. So Jai tends to go from a position of being a good person, plugging in with other individuals, and then with Ji it's a different perspective, because it's a sense of having social dynamics, so that it's not just a bunch of individuals that are kind of strung along loosely, because you can actually get far in having successful social dynamics just by being a good person, a good individual. But when you actually have an awareness that you're not just an individual among individuals, but there's a sense of a tribe, and the tribe has a math to it, a natural law math to it, and Ji brings out this natural law math.
Let's go.
So Ji really helps to understand these people dynamics and social alchemy, how that works. And for Jai, it can sometimes not always be aware of not just things like its moods, but also things that could make it happy. The Ji helps increase this awareness of Jai's like moves that it should make that would be healthy for its Jai, things that would be healing, things that would be positive and help increase your well-being. And then also, since you're radiating that out into the environment just by default, the group around you is well-being. And so Jai actually can have a very altruistic function when it's merged in union with Ji this way. The Jai's powers are very much about having a productive and harmonious tribe.
Go.
And for Jai, there can sometimes be this like lonely heart feeling of nobody understands me, and the Ji is actually very validating, because it kind of tells Jai, like, I see what your Jai is feeling and why it's feeling that way, and either yes, that's understandable why you're feeling that way, or sometimes a combination of both. This is what you need to change to feel better, or if it's even a happy thing that nobody else sees, if you're just like being this like flower in the midst of a bunch of thorns or something, it's like, good job, go you, your Jai's doing cool stuff even if nobody notices. And so Ji is just very, very empowering to Jai. Jai is a very like reserved, kind of unassuming power in some ways, unless it gets all uppity and throws a tantrum, and that's kind of the unhealthy way of doing it, like, everybody pay attention to me, damn it, you know. But like with a good connection with a Ji, there's less of this like sense of neediness, because you have your own unconscious validation of your Jai, so that you don't have to depend on the environment as much. And so that if you're in a kind of a famine situation for Jai, because sometimes Jai doesn't get fed, you can feed yourself based on your own unconscious powers.
Gold.
Another thing that Ji brings to Jai is a great deal of wisdom that comes with being aware as opposed to unaware. And so the Jai has to watch out for not like cringing at this new information, because a lot of times you can get like majorly quasi-death by Ji. Like Ji's observations can be like, hey, did you know your Jai is doing this and this and this? And so the Jai has to be heroic and robust and learn to take those impacts and then remodel the psyche and use that information for good and not be scared of it, because you can get scared and then the Ji will just stop giving information and the Jai will get diluted. Another thing that a new Jai has to watch out for when they get their start getting in touch with their Naiji powers is that it ups the secret agent griftery quality potential, because Ni and Jai are actually normally very charming and lots of people just voluntarily do things for you and they treat you well and all kinds of opportunities open up for you. And the Ji can all of a sudden tell you, hey, did you know that you could do this and people will react such and such, and it starts being a more like plotting and manipulative way of kind of getting an agenda done. And so you have to make sure that those are heroic agendas and that you're going about it honorably. That's not in a way that compromises your virtue.
Gold! Crushing!
Yay!
We don't have much film left, so this will be speed round. For the Naiji, when the Nijai's Z comes to us, there is the feeling of, or the awareness of how we could play the system, because that's kind of how a lot of times it ends up in our story, since it's our super offside. So when that happens, there is awareness that the system didn't plan for its Z to be helpful to the revolution, but the Nijai Z notes that it is. Actually, the way Z is doing things currently, we can slip a revolution right in there, which is really quite useful. So it can really warp drive forward Naiji plans, because there are some Z tracks already laid for you that you can make use of, although that was not their original intention. Also, again, going along with the distance that Naiji had with Z and Vi, there's the like classic rank. Naiji, when they're doing their native momentum, they tend to get rank in ways that, you know, would relate to, for example, being a Jez hunter in conduct, or being a Nai Alpha and having like big thoughts. But those don't get you often like recognized in classic Z rank. But there are ways, and the Nijai is very good at pointing out to the Naiji how they could organize their resources to get a really good Z rank, which would respect the abilities they actually have. Things to watch out for: these aren't bad, they're actually good, you just have to watch out for them being excessive. One is epic ambition. When the Z comes on, you're already feeling pretty epic, but all of a sudden you get like Z epic. You're like, oh, I want this and this and this, and I could have that, and oh, you know. And so you can get like a little like Monopoly, like I want the world to be my own little Monopoly board, yay! Which is cool if you're trying to actually make new incitations that are going to be helpful for people, but not for just I want to take over the world. Another one is being excessive about being hard-nosed. Z is about scoring, so Naiji, for example, can have their other give them a lot of interest in scoring well in a very Z way, and that's good because that can make their Kensei go up big time. They can increase our Kensei to a very, very high level. But we have to watch out for just like everyone else is weak, we have to get that score. I'm gonna crush you people. So you have to watch out for that, because like when the other puts that Z out there, man, you're like, I'm gonna get that no matter what.
That's awesome. So with Zai, when that comes to a Nijai, you'll have more of a sense of what the hard lines are. Z tends to be sort of getting an idea of what the system is, what the game is, and then kind of your place in the system and how to navigate and stuff like that. But Zai has to do with your personal game. It's situational logic, so it's more adaptable to kind of the situation at the moment and where your game comes into play, which is a foreign concept for Nijai. And then we're starting to get over onto the side of Zai and V, which are offside and polar for your others, so that's super offside and super polar for you, which is more of a reach. Zai is really good at seeing kind of where Z is hammering down and being on the right side of power plays. And another thing that Zai does is, because of, like Coach mentioned, its ability to just shrug things off, it helps the Zai protect itself from being overly extended. So it protects you from emotional overextension. Because, yeah. The downside of that is that Zai actually can be, because of the aforementioned personal game kind of reasons, can be extremely ruthless. And so you have to make sure that your Zai virtue is really on to know when your Naiji other is giving you game plays and things to do. You want to make sure that, let's see, what am I trying to say? Zai is very 49-51, and your Zai needs to be okay with the consequences.
We have very little time here, so Vi, when it comes to Naiji, is like sense of legacy, and that makes things uber important. So the upside of it being uber important is that you have mega sureness, and mega sureness is cool. Downside is you can actually really go too far. You can sign your name to things you don't want, like an artist that signs their name to a label and they think this is the greatest thing ever, and there'll never be anything different that I'll ever want to do, and then they get into a contract they wish they didn't. So Vi makes like spiritual contract, which is also makes you uber powerful, but you can make sure you sign the right things.
Okay, and for V gives a sense of aesthetic awareness, which a lot of times Nijai can be kind of like in a fantasy world, and so how to make that fantasy world like look really cool in the real world. And we get in touch with our other sense of like connoisseurship in the beauty of art and food, and there's a lot of Nijai artists that have a really good aesthetic sense and have like really awesome music videos and things like that. V can also help us get more of a sense of like earthly delights from things, as V is like this magical portal to someplace, but we also have to be careful that it doesn't lead to like shallowness in appearance and thinking. So we hope you enjoyed that, and if you have any more questions about peaking with your other, send them our way. So on the Nijai side, an experience getting in touch with the Nai is, let's see. Normally, let's see. Is this microphone on? Check.